Hey, welcome everybody to Sharing Hope. I am your host, Michael DiMuccio, and today we have a very special guest. As always, today we've got Dr. Tim Elmore. God has done such wonderful things through him, especially in connecting to the next generation. A little bit about Tim and his experience. Tim is the CEO and founder of Growing Leaders. He's a world-renowned expert, leadership, Gen Y, Gen Z. He equips adults, whether it's coaches, parents, educators, really to impart life principles and leadership principles into young adults. Some of the organizations that Tim has worked with, you'll recognize many of them, people within the Kansas City Royals organization, for example, the NFL. He's worked with universities and athletic departments such as Ohio State, Alabama, Stanford. He's worked with corporations such as Chick-fil-A. Tim has authored even 30 plus books, one in which is a best-selling curriculum called Habitudes, a great resource to get your hands on. It's images that form leadership habits and attitudes. So it's my pleasure today to welcome Tim Elmore. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you, Michael. Great to be with you today.
Very good. Well, as we kick this interview off, let's kind of just get down to the nitty gritty. Here we have this pandemic, this crisis situation. How have you personally, you and your family, how have you kind of transitioned with this? How are you dealing with it?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. Fortunately, we're doing well. It is a new normal. I'm at home instead of traveling right now, like many American people. And because I travel a lot, just my life is completely turned upside down. And the revenue is not being generated for organization because I'm not doing events and so forth. But all in all, we know we have it so much better than so many people we hear about on the news that have been infected or, have even died from this. So it's good news and bad news. The good news is I'm with a wonderful wife that I still like and love. Isn't it nice to be cooped up with somebody you actually like being around? And it's been a breather for me. I'm getting some writing done. But one thing I always tell people that ask me that question, how are you doing? I always, Michael, have to remind myself that even though we keep hearing the phrase, we're all in the same boat, and we are, rich and poor, black and white, etc. We are all in the same boat, but we're not all in the same storm. And here's what I mean. For some of us, the storm is just a light sprinkle. Life has changed a little bit. We're inside quarantine watching Netflix. It's a little bit of a breather, actually. For others, it really is a storm. We're a little bit scared. We're watching the news all day. But for some people, you and I both know it's a hurricane. I mean, it's tearing off the walls and the roof. We know people that have lost their jobs. We know people that have been infected, lots of people. I have several people that I know, and I even have a friend that lost a friend that have died due to COVID-19. So I always remind myself, I've got to lead out of empathy first, not out of, presuming, hey, it's not a big deal, suck it up, let's go. We need to lead with empathy, just like our Savior did.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point and a good reminder. I've had to catch myself with that too, is, right now things are, as probably as best as they can be for me, but looking out when I'm talking to others, I've known people affected, infected. I know people have lost their jobs, so on and so forth. Yeah. So this is really a tough time. Now, when I think of your expertise, the experience God has given you in really equipping people to equip the next generation, what do you say to, a parent or just in general, maybe give some insights on how to give practical tips to Gen Y, Gen Z in a situation like this?
Okay. Well, I want to take a minute, Michael, and describe the differences between millennials and Gen Z, but something just raced through my mind when you asked that question on how do we lead them right now. Let me just offer some simple but practical advice. So in these kinds of times where things are uncertain, it's very easy to worry, just lead out of anxious thoughts and, that sort of thing. So 3 quick tips for listeners. Number 1, as you're leading the next generation, mom, dad, coach, employer, I would say first, check your motives. Are you motivated by worry or wisdom when you communicate to them? Here's the difference. If I lead out of worry, I say things typically like, well, don't play in traffic, you'll get hit by a car. Well, the whole motivation is you're going to die, you know? What if you said, don't play in traffic, it's better to look both ways and actually stay away from traffic? That motivation, it's the same result, you're getting them away from traffic, but the whole impetus behind it is wisdom, not worry. I think parents can easily, unwittingly slip into leading out of worry, and we're building a narrative inside of our children. Be scared, be scared, be scared, be scared. So whatever direction you give mom or dad, make sure it's wisdom that's behind it, and they sense wisdom. They can smell worry a mile away. Even toddlers can smell worry a mile away. So, so that's number one. Check your motive, wisdom over worry. Check your foundation. Is it fear or facts? So, you know, there's a whole lot going around right now that's not fact-based, and we're scared to death and we don't have a mask on or whatever. So we need to be careful. But I want to make sure that when I pick up some news about the COVID-19 pandemic, I'm double checking it, make sure it's facts that I'm giving my advice on. You follow what I'm saying? It's just easy to be watching the news all day long. And by the way, let me just say this. I would recommend, this is just me, I'm just one guy, I would recommend get a quick 30 to 60 minute news update and turn the TV off and be about your business. If we're watching for 8 hours a day, we're probably going to get a narrative that's scary rather than God-filled. And you and I both know that doesn't paint a good picture for a leader right there. So, okay, so foundation, make sure it's facts, not fear. Make sure it's wisdom, not worry. The last one is check your advice. Is it based on panic or principles? I lead poorly when my whole motivation is panic. I'm just panicked. I lead really well if I know the set of principles that I lead by, and these principles are timeless. You and I both know they're biblical.
That's right.
But if I'm leading out of principles, my kids start realizing Dad's got principles he leads by. I don't have to worry. He knows what he's doing. And even if I don't fully understand, I know he's got a why behind the what. So that would be my quick advice on leading these young people right now. It's simple, but boy, do I need it in a time like this, because it's easy just to be in defense mode rather than offense mode. Okay, so Michael, if you don't mind, can I take a couple more minutes?
Yeah, go for it.
About the makeup of the millennials versus Gen Z. They are different. The first thing I would say is we need to be careful not to assume that a kid who's 14 or 15 years old is a millennial. They're not. I just had a NCAA Division I coach say to me, I'm trying to figure out my millennial student athletes. And I said to him, sir, your millennials are your assistant coaches right now. They're not your athletes. So millennials are now young professionals. They are now in the adult world. They're young, but they're, you know, mid-20s, 30s. The Gen Zers are the ones that are really kids that only have memories of the 21st century. So think about the difference. The millennials grew up in the 90s, 80s and 90s really, where the economy was on the rise, not on the decline. We all got our iPods and life was awesome. And parents were just obsessed with our kids' self-esteem, safety, and status. Think about that. Self-esteem, we gave them trophies just for showing up at the soccer field. Remember this?
Right,
okay.
right.
We chuckled at that, but it was because we wanted them to feel awesome about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
We were consumed about their status. We want to make sure and march down and chew out the teacher if our kid made a poor grade, because, you know, after all, they got to keep a high status, good scores to get into that college we want them to get into. And
right.
then their whole safety thing. We just wrapped them in bubble wrap. I know we've all talked about this, but I think sometimes we got so preoccupied with their safety, we prepared the path for the child instead of the child for the path. If you hear what I'm saying, we didn't get them ready for even adverse circumstances. We got them so safety conscious, they weren't ready for perhaps a time when they had to make it on their own and mama wasn't around. So that was the millennial narrative. Gen Z, oh my goodness. Think about the last 19, 20 years. First of all, think about this. If you're a teenager that was born in 2001, you have experienced in your lifetime 3 economic downturns. So you were born into one of them, 2001. Even though you were still an infant, you were looking up at adults that were scared because the dot-com era bubble burst and there was corporate scandal. And then you have the 2008, 2009 economic recession that we all remember very well. And now there's the coronavirus thing where 22 million Americans lost their jobs in 4 weeks. So it feels like the Great Depression in that sense. So I guess I want to say, if you're a leader, an employer, a parent, and anything in between of the next generation, just remember their narrative is probably scarcity, not abundance. Things are running out. I may not get a job when I get done with school. In fact, what will my job be? Will it be something I hate? So I would say anticipation among the millennial generation has morphed into anxiety among Gen Z. I would say confidence is morphing into caution. The millennial was probably overconfident 10 years ago that they're going to be the vice president of the company at 25 years old. Gen Z is very cautious about that, and maybe overly cautious. We need to say, you can do this, you can do this. Viral posts on social media are morphing into vanishing posts. So think about what this says to us. So with the millennials, we all understood the word viral, right? Millennials wanted to go viral with their meme or their, Instagram post. Gen Z wants to vanish, okay? So here's a scenario that might be helpful as a picture of what I'm talking about. So a decade ago, a millennial college student might have gone to the party on campus on Friday night and then posted pictures on Instagram of that great party, forgetting they had the job interview on Monday morning with that potential employer. And the potential saw the post and said, I don't think I want to hire you. Gen Z goes, well, I will go to the party and I do have to post, but it'll be on Snapchat or TikTok. It'll go away. Nobody will see it, that I don't want to see it. So they're very savvy about this. So I would say the millennials felt special. Gen Z feels savvy. That's the morphing that's going on. And we just need to know we're going to need to be hope givers. I love the name of your broadcast here. It's we got to be given hope.
Yes.
For a millennial, you might need to say, hey, wait a minute, you're a little overconfident there. With a Gen Z kid, you might need to say, Josh, you can do this. You really can do this. I think it's in you to do this. So I'll stop there, but I feel like that's huge that we understand that difference.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you what you've shared kind of leans my mind into a couple of blogs that you've written recently. One is called, I made a few notes here. One is called How Will the Global Pandemic Affect Gen Z and Beyond? And the other one is A Pandemic is a Terrible Thing to Waste. I love that title, but what's your heart behind why don't you share a little bit about those posts?
Okay, thanks for asking, Michael. Those were fun articles. I do a blog 3 times a week, and so I began to talk about, obviously, this new normal that we're in. So even though I'm not a prophet, I'm not a futurist, I began to look at the outcomes of being let's say even a teenager. Let's say you're 13, 14, 15 years old, and this is what's shaping you as you move into adulthood. So I think there's a handful of negative potential outcomes that we're going to need to fight against. And then I think there's some real positive potential outcomes that we need to foster. So let's do the negative first. Let's end with good news, okay? The 3 possible negatives are, number 1, the normalization of isolation. So we've all gotten used to quarantine. We're kind of isolating ourselves. And even though some kids are getting stir crazy, it's just making it feel more normal just to sit in front of Netflix and just watch TV all day. And that's not good. I'm not saying Netflix is evil. I'm just saying we need to make sure and realize God made us social creatures. We need, in fact, I would say I'm against social distancing. I'm for physical distancing, but we are social creatures. Find ways, even at a distance, to connect with others. And I just am concerned that we might see the normalization of just stay at home, stay in your pajamas. There's even a song that came out last year targeted at Gen Z called Pajamas. And the chorus is, let's just stay in our pajamas. I'm not kidding. So it was written by a musician named Nash. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is not what we need. So that's number 1, the normalization of isolation. Number 2, the normalization of panic and anxiety. Now, I've already warned against this. I just say we've got to fight worry. What did the Apostle Paul say? Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God is going to reign. Folks, we either believe that or we don't. So I'm just saying we've got to fight the normalization of we're just anxious every day. It's just who we are. It's not who we are. Now, let me share something with you. As the 21st century dawned, a cognitive behavioral therapist by the name of Dr. Robert Leahy said something that I think has gotten only more true today. Check this out. The average adolescent in America experiences the same level of anxiety as a psychiatric patient did in the 1950s. Is that not crazy? So it's just normal to be anxious. You were in a ward back in the 1950s. Now this is just normal. We're seeing a counselor, we're anxious. I'm not against counselors, I'm for counselors. I'm just saying we've got to battle this feeling that just being anxious is normal. And then the third negative potential is it's the normalization of a scarcity mindset. So we've got to foster an abundance mindset. Many of you know that Stephen Covey actually made this popular, 25, 30 years ago when he wrote the book, 7 Habits. Scarcity mindset is the mindset that says, oh my gosh, things are running out. Hold on to what you got. Abundance mindset, which I think is much more of a biblical worldview, is God provides. We're going to be fine. Well, let's give things away appropriately because he's going to provide. You follow what I'm saying? I just think we've got to fight this scarcity mindset. That's not a good mindset to enter adulthood with. In fact, my dad and I talked about this. My dad turns 90 years old this year. So he was born in 1930. The first 10 years of his life were the Great Depression. The next 5, World War II. So he was shaped by scarcity, be careful, be cautious, save the wrapping paper at Christmas. Remember those days? You know, and all I'm saying is that's wonderful in terms of wisdom and stewardship. It's not a good worry mindset or scarcity mindset to have. As you know, we're going to have to be people of faith that walk into our careers confident that things are going to get better. So I don't know, listeners, I'm not a prophet. I'm just saying we must battle those just for our mental health. Okay, one more quick thing. Let's talk about the positive potentials. In fact, let's fight for these, not against these. So one possible positive outcome that will happen to Gen Z and all this mess we're in is the expansion of resourcefulness and innovation. Isn't it true when resources get scarce, we can be resourceful? In fact, if we're resourcing our children with everything they could possibly want, they might not build that muscle of resourcefulness. You follow what I'm saying? If mom and dad just buy it for me, I don't ever get, I don't have to be. So I think we could build a great resourceful paradigm in the mindsets of our kids. If they get bored, hey, make up a game, figure it out. You know, we need to say that to them in love. But I think resourceful and innovation could be wonderful gifts that we get during this pandemic. Here's another one, the expansion of saving and giving. So because we have to be a little bit more cautious with our money, nothing wrong with that. I think kids may be seeing these marvelous gifts that are being offered, you know, on TV where we're donating to the Red Cross and to charities and so forth. Maybe this is going to be a picture that they go, I want to give to. And maybe I've only got $5, or maybe I can only donate blood, or maybe I can only give some food to a neighbor. That's good. That's a start. So let's foster a spirit of saving and giving. And then lastly, I love this possibility, the expansion of responsive service workers. So Michael, remember after 9/11, we saw a slew of young millennials going to New York City. They wanted to dig through the rubble. They were college students and they wanted to be at the ground zero site, just helping people. Kids, 20 years old, signed up to be in the military because we thought we got to do this. I'm getting even teary right now because I'm thinking that period of time, we saw our nation come together. And I guess somehow it just evaporated a little bit into polarization. But maybe this time could get these Gen Z kids going, I want to be a nurse. I want to be a doctor. Because they're heroes. So we are the leaders of these kids. We've got to make sure that the narrative, as much as we can, that the narrative they have is, we serve a great God, and let's go respond to the needs. Wow. I'll stop there.
Wow, very good. No, that was just rich in this overview, and thank you for, you know, showing your heart and revealing, you know, what you see coming in the future, and as I'm kind of hearing all these principles you're laying out, I think of, is there some advice that you could give some of our parents that are tuning into this?
Yeah.
What are some practical tips as they are leading, say, teenagers or next gen, young people?
Good question. Well, first, let me say, I really am optimistic. I hope that's coming through. And you referenced an article I did recently called "A Pandemic is a Terrible Thing to Waste." So listeners, let me tell you what I talked about in that brief article. I started researching as soon as this pandemic happened to us today, what people did in past breakouts or outbreaks, I should say, pandemics and epidemics, whether it's SARS or Ebola, or even 100 years ago with the Spanish influenza. I went back to 1665 and discovered, as part of the Black Plague in Europe, there was the Great Plague of London in 1665. And when that happened that year, 1665, Isaac Newton was a college student going to Cambridge University. So in their own version of social distancing, they sent all the students home. They knew enough to send kids home. And so while Isaac Newton is at home as a university student, he doesn't stop his research, his studies. While he was at home that year, get this, number one, he invented calculus. Isn't that crazy? Now, some of you may say that was actually bad news, not good news, but he actually invented calculus. Number two, he came up with his theories on optics, which he bought a prism, and he came up with his theories on optics and his theories on the laws of motion. And then finally, get this, it was during that pandemic that the proverbial apple fell from the tree, came up with the laws of gravity. So when he returns to school the next year, he has his theories in hand. By the next year, he's a fellow. 2 years later, he's a professor. I'm just saying a pandemic is a terrible thing to waste. He did not waste a moment of time just sitting back and on social media or watching Netflix. He made the most of it. He redeemed the time. Have you not heard that before? So I want to just say, as you're leading kids, what if you challenge them? What could we do today that we might not have done in a busy routine and we would have never noticed that we could have done this? I love how students I'm hearing about are doing this. There's a college student named Liam up in the New England area, came home from college. Actually, he goes to Yale, came home from college and was kind of bored. But he heard his mom say that a gal named Carolyn is a shut-in at 85 years old and needed food. He delivered food to her, gave her a virtual hug, and then realized, I wonder how many other elderly people are like this. He recruited 1,200 other college students to serve food to shut-ins. And I'm thinking, this is what we need to see. This is a picture of not wasting a pandemic. So adults, here's your marching orders. We can't be anxious ourselves if we're going to get our kids unanxious. The number one thing, Michael, that I heard from teachers as we reached out to the teachers we partner with is, get this, how can I lead an anxious student when I'm anxious myself? And it's hard. The answer is it's hard. So we've got to make sure we're overcoming it in ourselves. And that's where I would say we need to lead with empathy. We need to lead with faith that things could happen that could have never happened in a busy, normal routine. And then I'm going to go back to your word, hope. We've got to be hopeful that we're actually going to come out of this thing, not just surviving, but better. We're going to thrive because we've come up with some things that this pandemic caused us to have to come up with during that time. So I'll stop there.
Very good. No, it's really good. I want to actually go back to what you had just mentioned, about not wasting the pandemic and things people have done through the years. Like you made reference, calculus was born during a shut-in, So you've got a resource actually called Home Chats. So there's something that people can do while they're at home, locked up. It's a way they can be encouraged and equipped. So talk a little bit about this resource, Home Chats, that people can get involved with.
Thanks, Michael. Well, it's a free resource, so all you need to do is go to our website. But let me tell you what Home Chats is. We took 8 of our images. We teach leadership with images. That's what Habitudes are, images that form leadership habits and attitudes. So we selected 8 of them that we felt like these would be great conversation starters in the home. So if you've got a child that's 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, all the way through college, young adulthood, these images are little PDFs you can download. And one is called, I'll give you an example. One is called Trains and Tracks. And it's a photograph of a locomotive train engine going down the tracks. The whole truth to Trains and Tracks is simply this. Wouldn't it be ridiculous for an engineer of a locomotive train to stop at one of the train stations and say, I feel so confined by these train tracks. They're really keeping me back. I'm going to take this train off the tracks and I'm going to go up the hill tomorrow and I'm going to see how far I can go. Well, you and I both know he's not going to get very far. The tracks actually help him get where he needs to go. So it is with systems and processes. While we're at home, we need to have plans. We need to get our calendar out. We need to put train tracks down so it keeps our train going forward, not getting lost in entertainment when we could be doing something redemptive. So anyway, pictures are worth 1,000 words. Am I right about that?
True.
So pictures that start conversations. We have activities in these little home chats. So if you wanted to get the home chats, you simply go to growingleaders.com/home chats. growingleaders.com/home chats. And they're free and you can download. In fact, videos are on there, short videos. I actually have a pandemic as a terrible thing to waste there. You can watch with your kids and talk about it. So anyway, I'll stop there.
Well, very good. No, thank you, Steve. And kind of as we land the plane, you just mentioned your website where they can get home chats. Do you have any other ways that people can get in touch with you or, get more materials?
Absolutely. Yeah. Really, the website is the best single spot to go. We have the Habitude books there. We have, the blog you can subscribe to if that would be helpful. So it's growingleaders.com. And again, our goal, our direct person we work with is the people we're talking to right now, adults that are in front of the next generation. So in fact, if you don't mind, I'd love to close with a quick story that I think summarizes, it just came to my mind as you were asking this question. Last week, I had a conversation with a dad who's a businessman. He has 3 boys at home in West Texas. His name is Colin. And he said, Tim, I got the greatest compliment from my teenage son last week. I said, what was it? He goes, well, he said, my son and I were just sitting alone and we were just talking. And he said, my son said, Dad, Mom's kind of nervous right now, isn't she, about what we're going through? And he was quiet for a minute because he thought, well, I don't want to throw Mom under the bus here, but he was honest. He said, yeah, she's a little scared right now. And then his son said, but Dad, you're not scared, are you? And Colin said, no, son, I'm not scared. And his son said, well, Dad, that's what I needed to hear. Parents listening, what they need to hear you say is, I'm not scared. May we lead that way now, especially now.
Wow. Great story to close with, Tim. That has, not just informational, but you've been, I believe, inspirational to our viewers. And with that, I just want to encourage the viewers out there that have, clicked into this video here, go to growingleaders.com. Get more from Tim Elmore. There's such a wealth there. You can see it, his heart behind what he does. Again, Tim, thank you so much for spending time with us and imparting this information and your experiences. And, we just absolutely bless you, continue to pray for you, continue to pray for all of you out there that are listening. Thank you again for tuning in. And Tim, thank you for sharing hope. We'll see you next time, my friend.
Thanks, Michael.